So good morning and welcome to ADMA Unplugged. I am so delighted this morning to be joined by Carl Johnson, who is the founder of Anomaly, all the way from New York City. So welcome, Carl, and thank you for staying up so late in the evening to talk to us here over in Australia.
No problem at all. I love Australia, and obviously, as we know each other, it was very easy to say yes to. No problem.
Good. So anyone who's listening in today, feel free to ask questions. There is a pane that you can see on your screen there. You can type in questions, and I'll try and get to those questions as we are talking through with Carl today. But I'm going to start off with the line of questioning. And first of all, Carl, so you sold a very successful agency over in the UK. And then I believe you came over to Australia. At the time you were saying, right, I'm now out of the industry. I want to move down a different path. But you've been lured back, and I know that a colleague of yours got in touch and said, right, I want to set up something new in New York City, and you were lured back into the industry. So tell me what happened and why you came back.
Well, it took quite a lot to get me to come back, because the truth is, I've got friends in Australia. I love Australia. It's got most of what I want, i.e. the sun, sport, beaches, and I was incredibly tired after working for years when I sold the first agency. But I then didn't do any work at all for 18 months. I just took my kids to sports and hung around. It was great. But after about 18 months, I was actually really rested. And then I began to realize that it was more about being jaded. And I got a lot of offers for jobs which were very easy to say no to. They were always the same job. Our agency is very boring. Our agency is very traditional. Our agency needs to become more progressive. Can you come and be a change agent for this big, boring agency? That is a not very good job. It's the most common job out there, and I'm not interested in doing it. But my friend from New York came and made a totally different speech, which was, the world has changed. Agencies need to change. We have an opportunity to create an entirely different type of company. Now that felt very difficult and very interesting. And the combination of those two things are what lured me back. And I think because he's a clever bloke, he worked well on my wife, told her it'd be really good for the children to live in New York as well as Sydney and London. So a little bit of smart maneuvering by him, but really the appeal was the proposition of doing something completely different. If I was doing the same old, I would never have left Sydney.
So you're quoted as saying that you named the agency after the concept. So taking a completely different approach. Tell me about that.
Well, it was pretty obvious that lots of things have changed in the world, because technology drove a sort of radical transformation of media and the way consumers engage with brands and with media. And agencies just did not respond. It's very difficult if you've got 1,000 people or 500 people to evolve what an agency is and what it does. So there were still these big, lumbering, boring silos. There's the ad agency, the digital agency, the design agency, the PR agency, and all those separate silos who don't like each other, don't talk to each other, and don't work well. So we did not want to be lumped into any one of those buckets. And so, without being too silly, we learned something from the big and dumb approach the Americans took to military. They basically named their operations as if everybody was stupid. So, Operation Shock and Awe, Operation Iraqi Freedom. They assumed everybody was pretty simple and needed the answer spelled out for them. So, given we didn't want to be categorized in any of those other lumps, we wanted to be something different. We told everybody that we were something different. We are an anomaly. We are a deviation from the norm, and we're not going to let you compartmentalize us. Lots of people have tried, ever since we began, to say, yeah, but you've got to have some kind of snappy little line that sums up where you are, or some of that sort of nauseating textbook speak, like we're a media agnostic, channel neutral, idea centric, all that rubbish that makes you all puke. We weren't going to say any of that. We just keep saying, I'm sorry, I can't really help you, we're an anomaly. We're a different type of company. Let's talk more about what we do. And we had no problem at all with that. And I think that the smartest thing we did was name the company that, because it keeps us very clear on our proposition. And it holds us, calls us to be honest in whether what we're doing is sufficiently different and whether we're still an anomaly as the world keeps moving forward.
So what do you do? So what is it that makes you different?
Well, that's a very good question. Now, before we started, we obviously thought about it for 6 and 9 months, and we knew that if you come out with a slightly smart-ass name like Anomaly, you're going to get cynical journalists and other people saying, all right then, come on, in what way are you different? And we didn't want one of those sort of dancing on a head of a pin things where you try and tease apart in tiny little nuances. So we just said, okay, these are the 3 fundamental pillars of what makes Anomaly Anomaly. The first one is really simple and was born out of all my experience before, which was the fact that we will not be defined by a discipline or a channel. So we essentially surround the business problem with as many different skill sets as possible. So the first thing we do is we are not a group of 5 different companies with 5 different P&Ls. Because I've done a lot of research with holding companies, and it's pretty obvious that those people tend not to work very well together. And if you ask a question about what the right answer is, all everybody's really doing is arguing over money and what fees they're going to get. So I knew we needed a disparate, diverse skill set with one P&L where you really don't care what the answer is. If the answer is an event, do an event. If it's all about social media, do that, or if it's all of them. So the very first distinction is we really don't care what the output is. And that makes us different than most holding companies. And all you have to do is be in a room with a holding company to see how they really do not collaborate very well at all. So that's the first one. The second one was the whole concept of the way agencies are paid. Timesheets are horrendous and deaf and counterproductive for not only agencies but for clients. If you really think about it, if you're in charge of an agency and you want to make more money and you're operating on timesheets, then it's very simple. Load the team with as many people as possible and slow down. More people taking longer equals more money. That's got nothing to do with what a client wants. A client wants the biggest idea possible as fast as possible. They want a good answer in the market working for them. So we refused from day one to ever do timesheets because of that problem. But we went further and said essentially that we want to embrace performance-based compensation. We want to be paid more than other agencies because what we do will work harder. Now that's easy to say, and if you're going to be a little bit cocky like that, put your money where your mouth is. So we want a performance bonus with any and every client we can. We will gamble a significant portion of our fees. What that allows you to do is earn more if it works. So we want to be the highest paid agency the client's ever had and at the same time the best value they've ever had. And if you think about what that does for an agency, that says, okay, everybody commits to this client brief. Let's have more ideas. Do they work? Is it effective? How do we know? So then all the motivation for an agency is to deliver. Now again, most agencies are not very likely to embrace risk. We are highly entrepreneurial and very keen to back ourselves. If we fail, it means we did something wrong. And this subject was something we thought before we started that we would have a lot of trouble with procurement departments. And we have a lot of big clients. Diageo, Procter & Gamble, Budweiser, Nike, Google. They've all got big procurement departments. We have never failed to come to an agreement, ever, in the 10 years since we've been going. So in the end, although it sometimes takes a long time, the fact that we're prepared to be exposed to the extent that we are with risk. Because if we bet 10% or 15% of the annual fee, that is nearly all the profit of an agency. If an agency makes a 20% margin, they've done quite well. If you're betting 10 or 15%, you have a lot at stake. The other reason I like that model is because, of course, when you're having a debate with a client, you're not just saying, I like blue because blue's cool. You're saying, I like blue because I think it will work harder. I think it will work $1 million harder. So you end up in a much better position of integrity with your recommendations because you do have money at stake. So that was the second one. So, organizing around the business challenge, being paid for results, and then the third thing, the ownership of our own intellectual property. This came about because we just felt that we have many of the same skills as entrepreneurs who are starting their own companies, and it would be good for the company if, as well as servicing clients, we also speculated, again, with our time. Now, we're not a bank, so we're not very likely to be speculating hard cash. What we're going to be speculating with is our time and our talent, in effect, sweat equity. And in that instance, the bet is, can the very same people looking after those clients produce the 1 in 10 idea that works? And those three things are the pillars. Lots of other agencies do some of those things. I don't really look at who's doing what. We look at what we're doing, and if it's any good, we keep doing it, and if it's not, we change. But they are the reasons before we started. They're still the reasons, and we won't deviate from those. They're working for us.
So just picking up on that first point of saying, look, you're really looking at the outcome. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. You've got to go with the outcome that's going to work, and you've got to go with the outcome that's going to work for the client. What does that mean in terms of the talent that you have within the agency? Because obviously that is a very, very different model, and so the type of people that are sitting around a table are going to be completely different. So what are the additional types of people that you're going to have involved?
Well, there's two different answers to this. One is you need a very broad range of skill sets. So we will put anybody and everybody who we think is useful around there. So we can have experiential people, we can have obviously the classic writers, we can have entertainment people, music people, an architect, as well as all the people you'd expect to find. But social media, data analysts, communication strategists, we want as many people as possible, 6, 8, 10 people surrounding the business problem with an open mind as to what the answer is. And we deliberately look for, though, above and beyond their skill set, we look for a few more things. Firstly, we want as many different nationalities around the table as possible. We just think that you'd be amazed what throwing in a Brazilian voice or a Scandinavian voice brings to the party. We do have a little bit of an overwhelming amount of Australians here at the moment, I must say. You've got some crazy visa where we've got about 15 Australians in here because you've somehow managed to walk in with virtually no notice. It's fantastic. But anyway, so as many nationalities as possible because that mix is really helpful. And then two other things. You need people who have a unique combination of high talent and low ego. Really rare. The agency world is full of low talent, but it's also full of high ego. We want people who are prepared to work with each other and say, hey, your idea is better than mine. And that is pretty rare, because your idea might be beaten by some kid. You may well be the creative director, but that kid who's working on social media may have a much more powerful idea. So they are the things: diversity of skill sets, cultural mix, and then a particular type of person who is willing to collaborate but willing to give up their own ideas. And it's pretty rare, because I was asked also on this, as a follow-up to this question, somebody asked me, well, if you have all these ideas in the room, who the hell decides what you're going to go with? Because you can be literally saying, somebody will say we should do a TV series, someone else will say we should do brand partnerships, someone else should say, we should be, staging an event. And I hadn't thought about that question before, but the real answer is, some idea carries the room. Yeah. The energy in the room gravitates towards a really good idea. It's no one person's idea. It's not the senior person's or any particular department. You can tell a great idea because it galvanizes people, and then people start adding to it and building on it and expanding. And so it's weird to see that actually happen. It's very hard to write it down, but it's actually what happens.
So just picking up on the second pillar, about this idea of having some skin in the game, and that's, it's something I hear about Anomaly a lot, is this kind of different business model. You've said already it kind of allows you to have a bit of a different conversation with the client, because you're saying, look, I'm in this as well. But internally, does it change the mindset of the people that are working on the campaign? Because actually, it's now down to their success. It's not just about the client. Does it change the way that they're thinking and make everybody kind of behind one objective and one goal?
Yeah, it definitely, depending on their seniority and their kind of commercial maturity, they'll take it to varying degrees. you can be certain that the planning department are fully aware of the definition of success on each client. We know what the metrics are. We've got money against the metrics. So we know what somebody thinks a win looks like. Planning department will then be making sure everybody in that conversation knows what we're trying to achieve, including the creative department. But beyond that, they also know we've got money at stake. Now, we are pretty much of a meritocracy. If your team is good and your team wins and your team gets a big bonus for the agency, then you are highly likely personally to see some of that. We know who's delivering, and therefore we're very prepared to share the success with other people. And then I think on a cultural level, because you are going to care about whether it works or not, you do find yourself getting stuck into the nitty-gritty, because it suddenly starts mattering to you whether the point of sale was any good. All the stuff that is, you highfalutin agencies sometimes think is beneath them in some way, you get really interested in. You can start getting interested in shelf space and distribution strategy. And all of the stuff that you could have turned your nose up really matter, because anything that will drive a sale, you're interested in. So it does affect the way we do everything, yeah. But I think above and beyond everything, there's an underpinning of trust and shared commitment between the client and the agency, because they know we're in this.
Lost the audience. So the other part that makes you quite different is this idea of you've got a kind of incubation process, and also that you develop products yourself. And there's a couple of products that I've been told about, and you can tell me more about, that you kind of have a line of beauty products, you've got a mobile platform, and they've actually been developed by Anomaly, which, again, it's completely different. So tell me about the incubation process and how you go about developing products yourself.
Well, how we thought we were going to do it and how we ended up doing it has turned out to be two different things. We thought, somewhat naively before we began, that we'd be sitting around like everybody else, having ideas, like you do when you're sat in the bar and someone says, you know what we really need? Or when someone sees something great and said, I had that idea too. Yeah, we thought we would be sitting around making it up, but what really happened is when we made it really clear that this was our model, we have been inundated by approaches. Our phone has never stopped ringing from entrepreneurs. A lot of the West Coast here, a lot of technology companies, a lot of people who have bought licenses, a lot of people who have their own incubation companies. So we have basically tended to prioritize partnerships with other people who've been banging on our door, because we found that when we tried to do it ourselves, the urgent always drove out the important. If I'm sitting there in a meeting and then huge client initiatives start banging on our door saying, and these are the people paying us a ton of money, they are going to take priority. What we have found when we partner with an entrepreneur from the outside, their lives depend on it. They've got nothing else to do. We are all that is between them and success. So they become the pain in the ass to us. So what having an external partner does is it means somebody else is as crazy to make this happen as we are. So we found ourselves really cherry picking, turning down 49 out of 50 suggestions. We've had everybody on the phone saying, we've got the next Facebook, we've got the next Google, we've got the next Uber, we've got the next everything. And most of them haven't got anything, in truth. They've got a lot of hope and a lot of energy, but most of their ideas are either terrible or already exist. But every now and again, someone comes along with something that we can get our teeth stuck into, that we believe in. EOS, which is that lip balm, an incubation company came to us and they had a really good idea for a brand, but they didn't have an actual product portfolio. They didn't have the physical product. So what we did was we combined our innovation people who work on classic innovation projects like IDEO for people like Diageo, for Budweiser, for Procter & Gamble. We used their innovation thinking, their innovation processes and stages to work with this other company. And we created basically a range of products, predominantly focusing on interesting packaging. So the lip balm on this EOS is the #1 lip balm in the US. Now our fees for doing that were barely enough to pay for a party, but we are a shareholder in that brand, and that brand has got a very significant turnover, 100 million plus. So that's a good example of a success story. I've got plenty more failures, because again, like anyone that does new product development, they know that most new products fail, and ours are no different. Most of them fail. But the reason we keep going, whether it be in mobile technology or in long-form content or in pure, FMCG, we keep going because one of them might not fail, and we might be the people who have invented Tetra Pak, and you saw how billionaires came out of that. Or, on a day-in, day-out basis, it impacts our culture. It does make us commercially aware. It makes us really interested in what's happening in business, but it's also a compelling proposition to talent. So, given that we are nothing without the world's best talent, we've got to keep recruiting the best. Then the ability to have far greater control over these products is really appealing to creative talent, strategic talent. So we would do it, to be honest, we'd do it if we never make any money doing it. We'll do it for those two reasons alone. But we are in danger of having some success. So we will continue to do it. So beyond that, I can't tell you about the mobile platform because it's too confidential. But on that beauty product, that's out in the market and is successful. We've also got a lot of activity going into long-form content. So we have a joint venture with a celebrity chef, Eric Repair. So we made TV shows, licensed kitchens, book deals, personality appearances, etc., etc. And then we have lots more going into content, because obviously if you create the films, the shows, and you own, then there's global royalties, etc., etc. Those things are also helpful for our clients, because we become extremely well versed in the ways of TV and entertainment, which again, given the direction of communications for clients, that you need that in your armory too. So IP is never going to make us rich, I don't think, but it's making us better all the time. We also are encouraging it with our staff and have a funding scheme where members of staff can basically pitch us for, if they want a $10,000 contribution and they have a cracking good idea and they can convince us, we will help them. So one of our guys here, designer, has his own furniture range. So above and beyond what his day job is, he has his own furniture range. He made a big pitch to us. We gave him 10 grand. We want that in our culture.
And do you go into it as a true kind of partnership? So you're kind of, if it is a success, you're both sharing the success, you both own the IP. Is it a true kind of partnership?
Yep. It varies deal by deal. Some deals we've done on pure royalties because we felt that to be honest, we felt that the short-term royalty win would be extremely good. So we had a fantastic royalty deal with Jawbone, who are a tech company in California. So and we basically were getting, dollars per sale, and we made $3 million in year one off the sale of those units. But can you believe how committed we were to selling those deals? Others, like EOS, we weren't getting royalties. We had shares in the long-term building of that because we knew it would take longer. We also have, most of the time this happens with external entrepreneurs as opposed to our clients. But we have a new, interesting, large company where we have forged for the first time a really strong relationship where we are innovating new revenue streams for them and new products. And again, our fees are pretty rubbish, but we are launching 4 or 5 or 6 different products into market, and we have in each case either a royalty or ownership. Now that is really, really good. That's not some small, I'm not going to tell you who it is because it's too confidential, but it's a large company where we are putting a huge amount of commitment into the product, and we stand to do very well, and it's the most entrepreneurial relationship with a large client we've ever had. Some clients, we've offered to do this to some clients, in truth they're not set up to do it. They almost can't get past their own bureaucracy. It's weird. So that's why you can be nimbler and faster with independent entrepreneurs. And we skew our client business to performance bonuses. But this new one is straight down the middle, and we hope to be launching products into the market in the Christmas season.
Right, well, we'll watch out for that. Moving on to something kind of quite controversial, and you are reasonably outspoken on the agency model. And you've said to me, and I'm sure you've said elsewhere, that you really think that the current traditional agency model is broken, and I think a number of people would agree with you. But you also say that agencies are crippled by fear, and they're almost, their own worst enemy. What do you mean by that?
Well, it is, at its worst, the industry is full of fear and ego. And basically, there are too many people who are answerable to holding companies. They have to get, triple forms to get an account executive hired. They're terrified of not meeting their numbers. They have no boldness. Now, that makes people, it hinders them. They daren't present something in case the client doesn't like it, in case they get fired, in case they then have to tell somebody who's lost the revenue. And so basically an enormous number of people are riddled with doubt and fear and ego. And it's the same as doing a deal. The most powerful position you can take in a deal is to have the confidence to walk away. And it's the same thing with this. You need the boldness to get behind your own ideas. You can't be crazy, and they have to be well thought through and rational, have a strong rationale. But there is just too much fear in account handling, and too much fear about what other people will think, too much fear about what the client will think. And I think one of our secret weapons is just we're not frightened. And it's as simple as that. We don't mind having an argument with the client. We don't mind the client saying no. We know, and they know, that we have their best interest in heart, and we're going to give it everything. So if we're wrong, and they don't like what we're saying, fine. But we're not going to double guess, quadruple think. And it's just, I think we have a strong sense of values about our company and the people. And it's very empowering to be clear what you believe in. And a lot of agencies don't believe in anything except surviving, which is a pretty poor place to be.
I remember when we were last talking, when I saw you in New York, and you said to me there was a defining moment with Anomaly, that you had an extremely big client, and we won't mention any names, but you had an extremely big client who was, a bulk of the business, but you didn't like the path that it was going down and the relationship and where it was going to take the agency. And there was a defining moment where you had to make the choice and say, right, okay, I can either go with this and it's worth the money, or I'm going to cut this off and I'm going to take the agency down the path that I want to take it down. So tell us about that.
Well, it's a bit of a build on the previous answer. You have to know why the agency exists. You have to know what you're trying to do every day. Now, we created this agency because we believe in certain things about the business, but we also believe that, work is a hell of a lot of your day, and without getting too philosophical, we don't want to waste our lives. You come to work, you might be doing 10 or 12 hours. I want my life to be worthwhile. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. That means I want to work with clients I like, with people in this company who we like. So therefore, that impacts who you work with and the work you do. We had a client who was basically rude and offensive and damaging our culture. He would be offensive to people here. We would have people who didn't want to come to work. We would have people who didn't want to work on that business. And we had, in some cases, people in tears. Someone like me and the other partners have to look at those people and say, is it okay that he or she is crying? Now, the answer just has to be no. If the answer is yes, then you've lost everything, I think, as a human being. So you've got to have the courage of your convictions to know what type of company you are and what you believe in. So we tried really hard to sort this guy out. We tried all kinds of conversations, honesty sessions, and we gave it a long time to try and help him get better. He didn't get better. So in the end, we sat there and said, okay, in the end, he's going to break us. He's destroying the very soul of the company. If we don't basically say, we're not doing this, then he will take the company down. So in a way, it sounds like a brave decision, but on another way, we had no choice. You're either selling out the soul of the company, or you're doing what you have to protect it. And it therefore became quite easy. You then back yourself to replace that revenue with other better business, where there is better chemistry and more cultural compatibility. So that's exactly what we did. But the power inside the agency on the staff, the reinforcement of our corporate integrity and our authenticity in that we mean what we say was really strengthened. So it means that when we say things to clients and when we say things to our own people, they believe us because we don't lie and we don't bullshit. And so that's worth a lot more than their fee, basically.
So there was a bit of pain, but the actual the momentum really took off from there.
Yeah, well, the short-term pain versus long-term commitment to corporate values. Yeah. And those values are enduring and they serve you well over the years. Whereas a little bit of money in the short term, even though, to be honest, it was a lot of money, but not enough money to sell the company out, which is what it would have been. We would have sold our soul, which isn't good enough. I'd have rather close the company and come back to Bondi, no question.
So just on that note, we've got about 1 minute left. So you've got offices now, you're in New York, you're in London, you're in Amsterdam, Shanghai, there's rumours of Brazil. So what about Australia?
Anomaly Palm Beach, I think, is the answer.
We're all in.
It's Anomaly Palm Beach or Anomaly Icebergs, one of those two. We don't want to open an office and not to be good. We can only do Sydney when we have the time to do Sydney. We've only just opened Shanghai. It's definitely on my list of places I want there to be an Anomaly. It's definitely. But we don't want to do it unless we can give it sufficient time. We have a strong desire to come to Australia. And you know that I will invent all kinds of reasons why I should move there. But no, we want to be in that market. But we're not doing it fast because we still have got to sort out Shanghai, which we only opened last year. But it feels like we would naturally slide into that community. And I have a few friends in it, and I would love it.
So we're watching this space. I think that's where we'll leave that. So unfortunately we're out of time, and I honestly could carry on talking to you for hours, but for the moment we are out of time. So thank you so much for joining us from New York and for taking your evening to share some of your thoughts with us, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks over in New York City. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure talking to Carl, and I hope to bring you much more about this in the future. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.